perhaps after a profound spiritual revelation or a personal crisis, you sensed a transformation. The world you once knew, with its illusions and distractions, began to fade, leaving behind a profound stillness. Initially, this silence felt liberating, even empowering. But over time, that sense of purpose quietly dissipated. Not abruptly, but subtly, as if your soul had turned down the volume of life and forgotten to turn it back up. You ceased striving. You stopped caring, not recklessly, but in that quiet, existential way that makes you question. Why does everything feel so numb now that I've glimpsed the truth? This presents a paradox. We anticipate that spiritual awakening will reignite our passion, yet for many, especially those deeply introspective, empathetic, or seeking, it can have the opposite effect. It empties us. I recall a conversation with a friend, intelligent, spiritually attuned, immersed in the works of Eckhart Tolle, Alan Watts, and Jiddu Krishnamurti. After a profound awakening following a dark night of the soul, she felt she had transcended the illusions of ego and external success. Yet, 2 months later, she found herself staring at her ceiling, barely able to rise from bed. She confided, "I used to cry over not achieving enough. Now, I don't care whether I do anything at all. I thought awakening would ignite me, not leave me like this." Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, alluded to this post-awakening fog long ago. He didn't use trendy spiritual jargon, but he understood the psychological shifts that occur when the unconscious becomes conscious. Jung posited that enlightenment doesn't come from envisioning figures of light, but by bringing the darkness into consciousness. Awakening isn't the end, it's the commencement of a psychological death, the death of the persona, the false self constructed to navigate societal expectations. This process, known as individuation, is the journey toward integrating the conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche to achieve personal wholeness. But here's the catch. Your ego isn't eradicated, it's disoriented. It has lost its map, and without a new direction, motivation reigns. You're not depressed or lacking drive. You're in limbo. You've awakened from something, but haven't yet awakened into something else. This phase is often misunderstood. What you're experiencing isn't failure. It's an ancient and sacred pause. Jung warned that modern society tends to avoid this phase at all costs. He believed it was essential for true individuation, the process of becoming your authentic self. But no one tells you about this part, do they? And that's precisely what we're about to explore. What's truly happening in your psyche after awakening, and how this loss of motivation might be the most significant spiritual upgrade you've ever experienced, if you understand it correctly. If you're someone who loves expanding your mind and exploring life's deeper layers, consider subscribing to Fractal Wisdom. This channel aims to make the invisible visible and support those navigating the intricate path of awakening. If you've been drifting in that post-awakening fog, wondering where your spark went, know this: you're not losing your mind. You're undergoing a profound psychological shift. Most people can't name a change so deep it doesn't merely adjust your thinking. It reprograms your entire operating system. All the goals you once pursued, the to-do lists, the 5-year plans, the hustle culture playlists, they no longer resonate. Not because you failed, but because your motivation system itself is undergoing a transformation. Carl Jung foresaw this long before it became a trending topic. Let's delve deeper. For most of your life, your motivation stemmed from your ego identity, the me you believed yourself to be. You sought to prove yourself, to be seen, to be successful, to be loved. Jung referred to this as the persona, the social mask we wear to function in society. But the awakening process strips away the mask. Suddenly, you're not trying to be liked or to win the game because you see the game for what it is. And that's where it becomes perplexing. Without the mask, your old goals no longer fit. They were tailored to a version of you that no longer exists. You're like a character who has stepped off stage and can't remember their lines. This is why you feel unmotivated. You haven't lost your drive. You've outgrown the fuel that once powered it. Jung believed that we are not here to serve the ego, but to integrate it, aligning it with something greater. He termed this process individuation, the journey of transforming from a fragmented identity into a whole, unified self. Not the small self that once craved approval, but the self that transcends, the soul-level center within you that connects to everything. This self doesn't care about status, approval, or even clarity. It's here to express truth. So, once awakening occurs, your psyche begins recalibrating. It starts rejecting anything fake, forced, or ego-based. That includes jobs, relationships, ambitions, and even your carefully crafted dream board from 2021. This is why awakening can feel both liberating and disorienting. But Jung cautioned that if we stop here, we risk getting stuck. Some people awaken and fall into the trap of spiritual bypassing, convincing themselves that nothing matters, that it's all just illusion. They disconnect, float, and numb out. They confuse detachment with disengagement. But the self desires something different. It wants to live through you. It wants to bring heaven into this human body. It doesn't reject the world. It redefines your role in it. To step into this new role, you must navigate a peculiar middle phase. Jung described this phase as a necessary part of the individuation process. It's not glamorous and doesn't garner thousands of likes. It doesn't resemble meditating in Bali or posting profound quotes on Instagram. It looks like this: sitting in silence, unable to explain yourself, while the world continues to rush by. Jung would say, you're not lost, you're in between. You've disidentified from the ego, but haven't yet found a new way to live from the self. This space isn't a failure, it's a rite of passage. But in our hyper-productive world, stillness is often misinterpreted as laziness. Pausing is mistaken for paralysis. So, you judge yourself, and that judgment blocks the very energy your soul is trying to reclaim. Jung had a term for this psychological pause: enantiodromia. It's the process where things flip into their opposite. When you awaken, your inner pendulum swings from ego-driven striving to soul-level stillness. You go from "I must do everything" to "why do anything?" And this swing is sacred. It's how balance is restored in myth and ancient teachings. This is the hermit phase, the death before rebirth. It's the moment the caterpillar turns to soup inside the cocoon. Not a butterfly yet, not a bug anymore, just goo. Goo doesn't get things done. It doesn't hustle. It dissolves. This is where the ego panics. It wants action, identity, and direction. But the self whispers, let go. I'm building something deeper. Here's where modern spirituality often falls short. It teaches you to follow your joy or maintain high vibes only. While intention and energy matter, Carl Jung would tell you, if you try to skip the darkness, you skip the gold. Jung believed that shadow integration, facing the repressed, uncomfortable parts of yourself, is essential for becoming whole. It's not optional. It's the core curriculum of being a human soul. This sacred nothingness you feel is where the unconscious finally has space to rise. You're not failing. You're metabolizing. Your psyche is incredibly wise. It stalls your motivation, your drive, even your access to clarity on purpose. So you're forced to feel, witness, and reclaim what you've buried. That's the real work. And here's the beautiful twist. When you stop resisting the void, something strange begins to happen. Motivation starts to return, but it feels different this time. It's not anxious. It's not performative. It's not hustle. It's something older and quieter. A kind of soul-led movement that feels like remembering instead of chasing. Jung called this the emergence of the self. Not as a concept, but as a living inner compass. So, you've walked through the void. You've felt the silence, the stillness, the deep pause. And now, something new is stirring inside you. Not a lightning bolt, not fireworks, but a quiet inner pull. Not to return to your old life, but to build a new one. This is where the self begins to speak. Not in words, but in nudges, in resonance, in what Carl Jung called the symbolic life. He believed that once the ego has surrendered and the unconscious is integrated, we become capable of living from a place deeper than personality. That's when life stops being about survival and becomes about meaning. And here's an unexpected truth. It's often beautifully ordinary. When the self leads, you don't hustle, you respond. You're not motivated by fear of missing out. You're guided by what feels aligned. You no longer chase clarity. You recognize it when it arrives. Living from the self doesn't mean you'll always feel motivated in the traditional sense. You might still experience waves of fatigue, confusion, even grief. That's being human. But what you won't feel is that constant sense of inner betrayal, the feeling of dragging yourself through a life that doesn't fit. Instead, you might start to notice you're drawn to create, even when no one's watching. You say no to things that don't resonate, even if they look good on paper. You start following your curiosity, not your checklist. You choose peace